All right. Hey there. Welcome to the More Miles podcast. I'm Lauren,
I'm Zach.
and we are half of the More Miles run coaching team. Michelle and Scott are not with us here today, but we have a special guest who is here in place. We are here with our athlete and friend, Mr. Brad Distad. Brad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's quiet. I could take a nap, but yeah, it's summer.
Okay, and I could take a nap sounds like an appropriate answer. So, to give people a little bit of an introduction to, we're going to go a little more deeply into who you are, but what you have just done sort of explains your I could take a nap comment. Um, so, to give our listeners just a little bit of background here before we get going, Brad just completed the first person ever in recorded history to yo-yo the C&O Canal here in Maryland. It connects from Washington, D.C. all the way up to Cumberland. The C&O Canal towpath is 184.5 miles long. Brad did this project as a yo-yo. Brad, can you explain what that means? What does it mean to yo-yo a
Yeah,
distance?
it just means I started at one end, ran all the way to the other, and then returned. So it's really a term for out and back. I started at Washington D.C. mile zero, ran to Cumberland mile 184 and a half, and then returned to mile zero.
So just, okay, 184 and a half miles end to end. You turn around and come back. That totals up to 369 total miles on paper. In reality, is probably a little bit longer than that. And you did this in 8.5 days, a little bit over, less than 9. No,
Yeah,
less than 8.5. You were just under 8.5.
yep. 8 days, 9 hours, and 58 minutes.
Whew.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
So we are going to take a deep dive into this adventure. This is a huge undertaking. Brad is no stranger to distance running. He is also a 3-time 100-mile finisher. He just this year completed the C&O 100 in less than 24 hours for the first time. He has also run, 25 consecutive JFK 50 milers. He has, correct me if I'm wrong here, the longest currently active run streak at the JFK 50 mile. Not the longest ever, but you are the longest currently active,
Correct.
chasing the longest ever finisher streak.
That's still a ways away.
So, but 25 consecutive JFK 50 mile finishes. So you have clearly been running for quite a while. Before we get into the grand adventures of what you are doing now and the big projects that you're undertaking now, let's backtrack a little bit and tell us, when have you been an athlete your whole life? When did athletics first enter your life? And I know JFK is involved in some of that story, but before you even got to that point, tell us a little bit about where you got started.
Yeah, when I was really young, I was just super active. I think my parents wanted to get me involved in anything to burn energy. So they started me playing soccer from first grade, and I'd play year round. But I was the slowest player on the team. So they put me in goal, and I just became the goalie all the way through high school. And that was a big part of that was my athletics growing up, just soccer year round. But then my senior year, I had an accident. I fell on my head in a rock climbing accident, and all I could do was run. I could have no contact for about, I don't know, 3 months or so, and I'd show up at practice and just run around the field and until I was able to play. And then that graduated high school, went on to college, and it was the first time that I wasn't doing anything athletic in college because I wasn't good enough to play Division I soccer. So I just started running a little bit just to kind of stay in shape or be active. And then when I graduated college and came back, connected with some friends who were runners, and they were talking about running the Johnstown Marathon in Pennsylvania. And I just kind of butted into their conversation and said, that's running a marathon. That's something I've always wanted to do. It's a bucket list thing. And they looked at me and said, "Oh, Brad, you were a goalkeeper. You can't run a marathon, you know." Um, and that's probably one of the better ways to motivate me, because sure, I looked up Hal Higdon online and went out and kind of trained without telling them for several months. And then a couple weeks before the race, I came and said, "Hey, can I get a ride with you up to the race?" And they were shocked that I signed up for the race, and ran the Johnstown with them and finished it. And at the end of the race, we're all standing around getting ready to come home. And they said, "Well, you did the Johnstown, but the JFK is a month from now. There's no way you could recover and be able to turn around and do the JFK." And of course, I was saying, well, watch me. That was such a way to motivate me, is tell me what I can't do. And then a month later, that was my first JFK, and that was 26 years ago now. This year would be my 26th in November. So that's
So how long did it take you that first time?
12 and a half hours, I believe. Wasn't fast. It was just one of those, and I had no idea what I was doing. I often say I had no business being out there. Just jump in. I run my first marathon a month before. I had no idea what fueling was. I look at the pictures of it now. I'm wearing like sweatpants and t-shirt and all cotton everything. And and that was by far the worst recovery year I've ever had, is that first one.
That sounds about right. Especially just running your first marathon right before jumping into 50. So motivating you to get started, it sounds like, was not a hard sell. But what motivated you? You did your first marathon, you did your first 50. What motivated you to keep coming back? Because you haven't missed a year since.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it, I think, was the community of it. I knew in the first 50 steps of that first JFK, I turned to one of my friends who, had said that I couldn't finish it. And I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is great." They were surrounded by 1,000 people at whatever time, 7 a.m. in the morning, whatever time it was. I just remember turning to him and saying, "Next year when we do this again," and he smacked me across the chest. I was like, "What are you talking about? I haven't even finished. We haven't even got out of Boonesboro yet." I think I just kind of knew that first year that I loved the whole atmosphere of it. It starts in the town where I grew up in. I went to high school in Boonesboro. It ends at Williamsport High School, or close to Williamsport High School, 8 miles away by car. I loved maybe kind of the homegrown feel. Everybody that was involved. It felt like I knew people at every age stage growing up, and I guess that's just kept me coming back every year.
So one of the things that I think is particularly remarkable about your streak is, for one, for 25 consecutive years, you have been healthy enough to line up for a 50-mile race and complete it. And you've completed it over a broad spectrum. Some years it's taken you 12 and a half hours. Some years your fastest is a sub-9 finish at JFK. So there's a broad spectrum there, but you have been healthy enough to line up for a 50-mile race for 25 consecutive years. And that's incredible and counting. You also, so right now you are local. You live, 10 minutes from the start line and another 10 from the finish line probably, but that's not always been the case. You've really gone to some extraordinary efforts for some of these years. So give us a little bit of background there at some of the challenges in getting to the start line for 25 years.
It helps that the JFK is really close to Thanksgiving every year. So wherever we've lived, whether we lived in China for 2 years and we'd fly back before Thanksgiving, or we lived in California, West Coast for 8.5 years, lived in Minnesota for a little while, but it was always, I could come back for the JFK, but we'd stay for 2 weeks for Thanksgiving. And that was kind of our vacation home to see family. So that made it a lot easier to kind of fit in. Whereas had it been in the middle of summer or the spring, it might not have been able to do.
Yeah. Incredible. Okay, so 3 years ago now, I believe, if I'm counting right, you decided to broaden your horizons outside of the 50-mile distance. You'd been doing this for a long time, and you got the idea to start going a little bit longer. Tell us about that when you uh, broadened your horizons from 50 miles.
So it took me 10 years. My goal for running the JFK was always to break 10 hours because I thought 12-minute miles for 50, that seems easy, right? It's not. But it took me 10 years to break 10 hours, which would be 12-minute mile average the whole way. And then somewhere in there, I got down to like 901, which was really annoying. But
Hmm.
3 years ago, before I did the 100, I had a good JFK. I ran like a 930, and I just thought if I ever wanted to make a jump to 100, then it's not going to get easier as I get older. I might as well try it now. And so I called a friend, Matt Seifarth, because I knew he had a run coach that he bragged about and said was really awesome. I called him and I said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. Uh, and what would you recommend?" I've always kind of been a wing it kind of person, but I just can't do that with 100 miles. I can't just show up at the start line and wing it. Um, so he recommended More Miles to Go, run coaching, and Lauren. And so that's when I called you and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. I want to run 100. Is it going to break me for the 50? And am I going to be forever injured?" And you said no. So that's how I started running the 100.
And you currently are streaking the 100 also. You've done 3 years in a row. Is this a pattern?
No, I do this 25 consecutive years. I really went this with the goal again of I want to break 24 hours. And it took three. I finally broke 24 hours this year. And even just on my run on the C&O Canal the other week, I was thinking like I'd like to go back and help and maybe work an aid station or pace somebody at the end. Just do some different stuff like that. First of all, it'd be cheaper than signing up for the 100, and and then I just don't know that I want to make this a streak. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so we'll see. Now let's wait till we get to January and February, and I'll start having fear of missing out, and then I'll sign up. There we go again.
We'll see. That's a 2025 Brad problem.
Right. But it's different thinking than previous years. Previous years, it was the first year and second year I ran the 100. I was in so much pain afterwards, different pains. One year was chafing, one year was muscle pain that I couldn't imagine trying it again. This year I finished and I didn't really like I'd figured out a lot of the pain issues that I had in the first two years. Still very tired and sore at the end of 100, but it was a different feeling in that I felt like I could do this again or I could keep going. Now it's more of a do I want to do it again as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
finishing the race and saying I'm never doing this again. But
So you ran the 100-mile at the last weekend of April. You said you felt like you could have kept going, and this idea for the C&O yo-yo was already in your head. It wasn't new. It wasn't just out of the blue. I know you said you're kind of a wing it kind of person, but you'd been thinking about this for a long time. Where did that idea to take on such a big project come from?
yeah, after I'd done the C&O Canal, I don't remember the first or second time, I started looking up FKTs, fastest known times, and saw some Appalachian Trail times and thought, well, I'm never going to touch those. I'm not that fast. But under the Appalachian Trail, they had a section called Yo-Yo, and there was a guy that had run the yo-yo the Appalachian Trail in 300 and some days, and I thought, well, if I only had the time, I could probably do the Appalachian Trail in 300 days, yo-yoing it. But I don't have that kind of time with my life. Um, then I started looking at C&O Canal and noticed that nobody had ever yo-yoed it, and thought, well, gosh, if all I have to do is finish it and I get the fastest known time. So that's kind of how that came up. And I had mentioned it to you, I think almost a year ago now. It was after the C&O Canal, the second time I had done the C&O Canal 100. Um, and that's kind of where the thought process started.
So let's expand upon that a little bit. You mentioned with your life not having 300 days to just take off and go have a grand adventure. Backing up a little bit, tell us a little bit about your life, because you don't just, it's not easy for you to just pick up and go, even for 100-mile kind of adventure.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about your family and what you do for a living outside of running.
Yeah, I'm a full-time middle school math teacher, certified to teach. I'd like to get back to high school teaching. I've done a lot of work with high school, middle school students over the last 20 years. But I'm married and we have 6 kids.
Oh my God.
The family grown over the years. The first time I ran the JFK, I wasn't married. I've run the JFK for 25 years and I've been married for 18. So that's Jessica, my wife, often says, it's good that I was running before we got married, because there are times when it's hard. That I usually run in the mornings, but if I can't get my running in the morning, I come home from work and they're all expecting to see me, and I'm out the door to go for a run. So that's why I really try to run in the morning, so that doesn't happen that often. But yeah, even going out for a 100-mile race, for the next week, I'm recovering and I'm not as able to be the dad I want to be because, well, my legs are shot. And then being gone for 9 days to run the C&O Canal, also not easy. So everybody has to kind of be in on it, or okay with me being gone to some extent. And then I had to promise
So
them I'll never do this again. Right?
that was my next
No
question,
repeats
is
on
what
this
was
one.
the yeah, what was your family's reaction when you first brought this up as a real plan that you wanted to pull together?
I think the kids were excited, but they had no idea. Like their concept of, you know, 300 miles is, oh, that's like a day's drive, right? No big deal. But yeah, there was some negotiation happen between Jess and I. Just in no, this is not going to be a streak thing. No, I'm not going to do this every year. I just want to take a shot at this. And yeah, some of it was, well, maybe I'll pull back on the C&O Canal 100 next year and I'll do this now and figure out some other things. So, yep.
Trade-offs.
Yep.
So you,
So, oh, go ahead, Zach.
Brad, so you said you're kind of just wing it person, and for the most part, I am too. But I'm interested to kind of like hear about your training or like how you went about. Like, I feel like there's got to be some logistical strategy to one, training, and then two, like during that whole week, like getting everything like organized and having people in the right places and all that other stuff. So I feel like there was some planning that went into this, correct?
Yes. I am very much not a type A personality. I don't line things up all that. That's why my wife and I balance each other out well. She is very type A personality, and I'm a little bit more like, hey, let's go try something. But the training really, I lean on Lauren for that. She just tell me what to do, and I'll go do it. And so that makes that so much easier for me. I don't have to think about what I'm doing for training. If she tells me to go run and hold my breath for 2 miles and only breathe out of my nose, okay, I'll go do it. I won't necessarily like it, but I'll assume that there's a point to it. And
I heard that's good for long FKTs.
yes, yeah, good in 30-degree weather. First time I had to do.
He's joking a little bit, but one thing that I think is interesting about Brad and where this joke kind of comes from is that you do own a Garmin watch, but you don't use it. We have been working together for 3 years now, and you log all of your training through an app on your phone. You don't use the fancy devices and all the data metrics, and you keep it simple and minimal. So we're doing we're doing essentially, instead of, because you're not using heart rate data, we're really just going by effort. So the substitution for doing a MAF heart rate test is to close your mouth, breathe through your nose only. Um, the first time Brad went out to do this test, it was frigid. It was very cold outside, and I did not consider that when I was writing it in my plan, but he did. He went out and did it, closed his mouth, did nose breathing the whole way in frigid air conditions. When he finished, he said, "Boy, that was hard." I thought, oh gosh, I
You're like,
didn't
this is
even
not how it's
consider the
supposed to be.
temperature.
Yeah,
Right.
But
that's
that's
great.
something interesting about you too, is that you really have, you just keep it simple. You really do. I mean, we run by paces. We do workouts, but in terms of, we're not tracking your heart rate data minute by minute along the way. You are just working on effort and focusing on how you feel, and it's a little bit more simple than a lot of runners out there in 2024 who are tracking everything.
Like maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's too much data going into stuff sometimes. I mean, we talked about this with the spring energy issue, not to get into that too much, but I think maybe I didn't notice it in the 100 because I fueled on the last 100 with awesome sauce, but I didn't notice any bonking. Maybe because just intuitively I'm noticing that I need more calories, and I hit the aid stations and I'm not thinking about it. I'm just getting more calories. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're being more intuitive and taking out that piece of, well, the numbers say this, so it should be this, and but you're trusting yourself and being intuitive in that way.
But yeah, Zach, you asked about the planning for it. Yeah, I set up a little bit of a spreadsheet and planned out days, but I didn't have a clear idea of whether it would take 7 days or 10 days. I just left myself a window, and uh, I felt really good about my plan for the first 2 days, uh, but I had no idea what to expect on the third day, and figured I was just going to have to. I kept saying it's to be decided. I had people
Right.
kind of lined up. I had no idea what was going to happen with days like 6 through 10 if I needed them.
Well, I can only imagine because like on the 100-mile race that I've done, that you have pacers and crew that are going to be there waiting for you. And they're like, "What time are you going to be there?" And
I don't know.
I was like, I don't know. I mean, really depends on, and how you feel at that moment in time. But you know, knowing how you're going to feel like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out is really hard to kind of plan for, especially if you've never done it before. And there's not a real set standard either, since you're the first person to do it. If you have someone else that, I feel like that's a lot harder when it's the first time that someone's ever done it, because you don't have a standard to kind of go after, a benchmark to kind of go after.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you feel confident, I said I felt confident the first 2 days because in my head I'm thinking, well, the first day I'm going to do 55 miles. That's just the JFK. I've done that before, and this is all flat. And the second day I'm going to just do it again. That's like running the C&O Canal 100. I'll take care of myself.
Right.
But there was no planning for the heat. I got what I felt the most confident in. That's where I feel like it all kind of fell apart on that second day. And that caused me to have to adjust everything, because that second day it was 98 degrees with 104 feels like temperature, and it hit a section of the canal. There aren't many sections of the canal that aren't shaded. So I was in the shade almost the whole way, but that second day you're going through kind of slack water area, and it's a mile
Mm-hmm.
wide open in the hot sun, and it just, I couldn't get enough water in me. So that caused me to have to readjust what felt like right at the beginning of what I was doing. Well, I know it's the second day, but
Right.
yeah, when I'm thinking I still have 5 to 6 days to go, I didn't expect to have to readjust to that early.
Right.
Well, I think that's something that we should really highlight here that, as you said, you are a teacher, you are a father of six. You had a planned window that you could get this done in, and that was it. Like there isn't really an opportunity to adjust this to September or, a time of year that might be easier in terms of the weather and the conditions. And even in terms of the summer, at the time that you had planned to do this, there was a pretty significant heat advisory. It was not typical June weather. And we're kind of getting closer and closer and watching the forecast coming into view and thinking, well, like, what do you do, right? Do you push it back later in the summer? That's not that you're still taking a risk in doing that. And so it really, you stuck with the window that you had originally planned on and had the opportunity to do it despite seeing this heat advisory coming into view. Um, Tell us a little bit about what your original plan was in terms of because there's so many different ways to do big adventures like this. Like you hear about the Appalachian Trail, for example. They'll run as long as they can during the day. Maybe they'll take a 2 or 3 hour nap overnight and then get up and keep going again. How did you originally plan to break this down, and what were you doing in between running segments, or what was your plan to do in between running segments?
Yeah. Yeah, I had planned to run probably about an average of 53 miles a day. 50 miles a day is what I was hoping. I had borrowed my dad's van so that I would have that kind of move ahead of me, and I'd spend nights in the van. I had that uh, as kind of my aid station at the end of the day, beginning of the day. And I just in my head, I thought that's perfect. I'll sleep in the van. I won't have to leave. I'll get a good night's rest. If I finish by, even if I take longer and finish by 6 or 7 each night, I can still get a full 8 hours of sleep. But then when I borrowed my dad, I guess he never told me, and I didn't realize the air conditioner wasn't working. So not that you were going to run the air conditioner at night, but at least you could cool off the van at some point. And I spent that first night in the van in Brunswick, and like I had the doors open. I had the window, the hatchback open, and then the bugs came in, and so I doused myself in bug spray, and um, I think the van finally cooled down by 2 in the morning, and maybe I got 5 or 6 hours of some kind of sleep, but it's just it was kind of bizarre being covered in bug spray with all the doors open in Brunswick, trying to sleep in a van, and that ended up being the only night I slept in the van. From there, it was I need to go home and take a shower to cool off because the next day was the actual heated, the hot day, the 104 day, and I just needed something to cool down after that day, and I wasn't going to be able to spend the night in the van. So, yep.
Yeah, you couldn't get cool. Like you're out running through 90-degree temperature, upper 90s even. I mean, I think I wish I had written down what it actually was, but we're talking about like 97, 98, 99-degree temperatures and humid all day. And then when you're done for the day, there's no reprieve.
Yeah.
That first day anyway. I think it was really smart the way you adapted and went home in between and then returned back to the spot that I don't know, you reflect on that a little bit. Do you think that you could have made it if you hadn't have adjusted to doing that and taking those overnight?
I think, yeah, I needed to come home. And luckily, I guess I live kind of, Hagerstown's like halfway on the Appalachian Trail, so that's nice. So the driving was never too excessive. But what made it hard was waking up that third day at home at 4 a.m. and knowing that I had to get back out the door and I had to get back down to the canal and I wanted to get started by 5 a.m. On that third day. And I think I had Shelly graciously offered to meet me at 5 a.m. at Cushwa and run the first 3 miles with me. And I think I might not have gotten out of bed had I not known that Shelly was going to be there just to run the first 3.5 miles with me. So there are just different times like that people came out to run with me, and I felt like, oh my goodness, like this run is like I'm surviving this run because I don't want to let somebody down, or thank goodness Shelly was there to meet me that morning because I might not have gotten out of bed. Um, and then later in the week, it's all perspective, right? You said it was upper 90s. I was running with Luke later in the week, and he was talking about how hot it was that day, and I think it was like 93. And I was thinking, this feels great. 93 is extreme. I am really happy with this right now. There's a breeze. We're in the shade. 93 degrees. I can deal with this. But yeah, that was because the first 2 days were the hottest.
So what kind of things were you doing just to stay safe and stay cool enough to keep yourself moving forward on, especially on those hottest days? But I mean, there was never a day that wasn't hot. It just maybe was more or less hot any given day. What kind of things were you doing?
Yeah, I used, I mean, I had Noon, I had electrolytes, I had Gatorade, ran with Tailwind. So just I had the backpack with the reservoir in it. So I was taking in, I think I calculated maybe just south of 200 ounces of water every day, refilling. I had water purification tablets with me, which really came in handy on the way back on the canal. I didn't have as many people to give me some water to help fill up water at places. So I'd use the water pumps, and I just used the water purification tablets. And I'd fill my water bottles, wait a half hour, and then I could drink them. So that really helped. But then I think the other good thing was I'd hit almost every water pump and just put my head under it and douse my head and stay cooled out wet. At some point, I had to take a shirt and roll it up and put it across my shoulders because the backpack, the running backpack I had, was cutting into my shoulders. So I not only needed protection for my shoulder because it was digging into my shoulder. I think I'll probably have a little scar there now. But I realized if I get that wet, it just felt great across my shoulders and the back of my neck. So that was, I don't know if all of that was smart, but it sure seemed to help when I was running.
Well, I think one of the things that we talked about in the week leading up to beginning this adventure was that so much of what you were going to go through, how you were going to manage yourself throughout the day was going to be a learn as you go
Yeah.
process. We couldn't sit on Thursday and create a perfect master plan for how the next 7 to 10 days are going to go. And it sounds like you really did that really well. And not only learning how to keep yourself cool and keep yourself safe, but sort of finding a routine to get yourself into, to just get up, go again, get up, go again, and keep yourself moving forward. I mean, if you look at the data from your run, each day is really consistent. Like your moving pace for the day is you're in 14-minute range, I think, every single day.
Yep.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I had to learn was balancing between what was important for the day and what was important for the whole run. Um, I mean, I don't remember who I told this, but like the first day I ran, it's 5 miles from the end. I noticed some chafing issues. And on a normal run or a normal race, I probably would have said, oh, the heck with it. I'm just going to finish. I'm not going to waste 5 minutes taking care of this. I'm just going to finish the race. But I had to stop and check myself and think, no, I have 305 to go. So I stopped, took care of that. And so each day kind of became maybe a balancing act that way, where I'd get out and I'd really try for the first 5 miles, just do whatever I had to do to get that first hour under my belt, and try to run the whole first 5 miles, even if it was just a slower pace. And then it was to get to 10, and that's that chunking mentality. And once I got to 10, it was some combination of a mile running, half mile walking. mile running. And then eventually by the end of the day, it turned into what do I have to do to set myself up for success tomorrow? And that was always, excuse me, half mile walking, half mile running. So it break down to that. And um, that's what you see in the pacing charts, half mile on, half mile off. And that gave me an opportunity every half mile to think, what do I need to attend to? Do I need more fueling? In the next half mile break, I'm gonna eat some more goo, or I'm gonna pull out. I actually never got to the Pop Tarts. I didn't, and I thought I would eat more solid food on the run, but after I did that the first day and the second day, and it just felt like it bogged me down so much. So I tried to put the solid food off until the evening, and instead lived
Okay.
on goo packets and tailwind through the day, and really just tried to make breakfast and dinner something big. Um, but yeah, it just turned into every half mile. What do I need to do this half mile to take care of myself? So,
I want to circle back to that chunking mentality in just a second, but the first question I have is like, what did you eat when you're getting off the canal and going home every night? What kind of things were you reaching for or craving?
I got these tuna packets, and that was the only thing that I bought before the run that I actually consistently ate every night. I bought a whole bunch of single serve tuna packets to make sure protein in my body. Um, uh, I eat a lot of peanut butter and jelly. So in the mornings, like that just becomes my breakfast, two peanut butter sandwiches. And at night, Jess had made this chicken and rice that was left over. So for like 3 nights in a row, I just kept eating all this chicken and rice, which was really helpful that I came home for that because I couldn't have carried it with me. Otherwise, my plan had been every night I had this um, chicken and corn chowder, great value from Walmart. And the only reason I picked it was because it had like 460 calories per can. So I purposely looked for stuff with a whole lot of calories that wasn't really, really big and I could travel with it. Um, but I just tried to eat calories and get some protein and some salt back in my body and hoped that that would be enough.
Was there anything when you finished for good that you treated yourself to or like really wanted when you were completely finished?
I there wasn't a whole lot that I just wanted to sit. Uh, I think eventually we got really nice ice cream, and that was it. That was my celebration. But yeah,
So come back to what you mentioned about chunking things down, because this is a philosophy that you run by really well over time. And I think the first time I heard you talk about it was the first time you ran 100. I don't know if it's been the mindset that you've approached running with prior to that, but talk a little bit about standing at mile zero, knowing that you have 369 miles ahead of you. How do you approach that mentally? What do you do to even begin without feeling overwhelmed and intimidated by that task?
yeah, I think this this was a little different in that I think in the back of my mind I always had to have 369 miles in my head to make sure I was healthy the whole way and doing what I could do to be successful the next day and the next day. Um, but really, the beginning of this, I knew you and Kendall were starting with me, and I just thought, oh, I'll see them for the first 5 to 10 miles or so, and so that kind of helps mentally. 5 to 10 miles, and then you guys were gonna give me a water refill. I think it was mile 30, so it became well. After 10 miles, it was I'm gonna eat at 20 miles, and then after 20 miles, it was I was gonna see people I knew at 30 miles. So I just kind of think through that. A typical race like the JFK or the C&O Canal 100, I'm never thinking about the whole distance. Um, I'm never thinking I'm starting at the start line and I'm going to run 50 miles or 100 miles. I'm thinking I just want to get to the first aid station. Or JFK, I just want to get to the top of South Mountain, deal with the hill first. And then get to mile 5. So I'm just thinking aid station to aid station in those races. Whereas this one, it was thinking about who I was going to see, when I was going to see them, and then especially the second half of the day, consideration of what do I have to do right now to make sure I'm successful tomorrow. So that was the thinking, long-term thinking. If I want to run 369 miles, how do I keep healthy for that?
So the very first day, starting with you on that first day, I did a 20-mile run that day, which was less than half of what you were doing. It's almost a third of what you were doing that day, and was hot and soggy and struggling. And then went to meet you at mile 30 for a water drop. And just while we were sitting and waiting for you to show up, we were just sitting there sweating. We weren't running. We weren't doing anything. We were just sitting on a bench waiting and sweating for you to come. And I admit when we left, I was worried. I didn't doubt you and your ability, but I was worried. And I think it was that night I saw you post on social media. You had posted what you did for that day, and someone said, "Wait, you're going out and back both ways?" And your comment response was, "Well, the heat is having me rethink that or second guess that." And I saw that comment and I just thought,
What were you talking?
okay, like
Sorry, this is Isaac. This is
it's okay. Hi, Isaac. So it was interesting sort of sitting back and seeing you have some of those doubts and reconsidering. And I don't think anybody would have faulted you under the conditions that you were facing in that kind of heat if you did adjust your goal or adjust your plan. Was there ever a point that you felt confident that you were definitely going to do this? Or did you really just take it one day, one step at a time?
Yeah, those first couple days, especially going through Slackwater in that heat, in the wide open, feeling the heat coming off the cliffs and up off of that concrete. It was, oh, and that was another adjustment. I always run with compression socks, long distance, but they were so hot to wear that second day that I ditched those the third day. And they had been dusted me, getting my legs just looked ripped up because dust would get under the socks and tear me apart.
Mm.
So the third day when I got rid of those, that felt better. But as far as, I think when I got to Cumberland and turned around, just mentally, I needed to turn around and at least do 3 or 4 miles back in the right direction to feel like I was going to go back. That felt good, like I had a chance to get this done. But when I hit Williamsport, coming back the second time, and still felt pretty decent. At the end of that day, that was where I think I knew I got this done. I just have to keep moving, even if I have to take an extra day, which I did, because I went from Williamsport to Brunswick the day after that and felt exhausted and couldn't imagine doing another long day. So I added a day at the end and split my last day. My planned last day, I split into 2 days. Instead of doing 50 miles, I did like 26 and 27 over 2 days. But yeah, I'm sorry. Long way of saying when I got back to Williamsport that second time, that's when I really felt like I could get it done.
You still had 100 miles ahead of you at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I also had 269 miles behind me. So it's that knowing how I feel, how far I'd already come, I thought I can do this even if I just take it.
One of the things you mentioned in your reflection that you texted to me was about the people. So talk about that for a minute. The people that helped you get to this place and through to the other side.
Yeah, I think what I wrote was, there are a couple different things that kind of kept hitting me as I ran, and that's why I kept writing stuff down. But that was it's not a me thing, it's a we thing. Like I really felt like, when I finished each day, it wasn't just me finishing, it was all the people who had helped me along the way, whether it was Adam or Luke or Jeff or Shelly. I'm going to miss people. My sister, who lives in Carlisle, heard I was running this and had all these extra Gatorade pods, which is like condensed or yeah, whatever, condensed Gatorade, and sent them to me through my dad. And my dad, who's 81 years old, waited for me at White's Ferry the second time I came through there, and it just became like I really felt like when I was finishing, it wasn't just me finishing and crossing the finish line, but it was like all of us collectively were doing it. I just happened to be the one running, if that makes sense. So just really grateful for all the help. I said it earlier. Having Shelly wake up on that third day and meet me out there after that insanely hot day was a lifesaver, because I don't know that I would have wanted to get up and go do it again. But feeling got somebody else in it with me. We're going to go run. So, yep.
Obviously, we talked about the heat being such a big challenge for you, but were there any other challenges or hard points or obstacles that you felt like were maybe not even preventing you from moving forward, but just more difficult than just the running in and of itself?
Yeah, I said, I mean, it was hard having kind of the debate with Jess every day, like, why are you doing, you're away for 8 days. And so it's hard knowing, what's going on at home with the kids and not being able to be as involved. And then, physically, I had some problems with my left foot. I've never had my left foot swell up before. So there were thoughts on the way back in the second half of the run that, wait, am I really doing something that's going to injure myself? Or is this just swelling? And had to keep trying to decide, if I'm going to injure myself, I don't know that I want to do this. But I was always able to run on it. I was always able to move it. Always had full range of motion, even if it ached a little bit. And then at the end of the run, if you've ever blown up a surgical glove on your hand and it looks like all fat in the finger, that's what my left foot looked like. It was like all puffy and swollen, and it looks much better now. Still achy a little bit, but yeah, that was one of those. I decided that if I couldn't fit my foot in my shoe, I wasn't gonna run. That was my sign that I needed to stop. But every morning, my foot was able to sneak into my shoe just enough. so,
Darn
so
it.
all right.
So 5 days out now, I think we're less than a week since you finished. How is your body, your system, your head feeling as a whole?
Well, we have
How's the recovery going?
right. It's a JFK prep. I got to be out for that. No, all I've done is walk. You had told me maybe not even walk, but I just go out and walk a little bit. Left foot feeling much better. Still a little achy. Every day, right around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I just want to lay down and take a nap for 2 hours. So I just feel very tired. We get to like 9 o'clock at night and I'm ready to collapse. And then, excuse me, then the kids have swim practice in the morning. So we have to get them there by 8 o'clock. So 7 o'clock in the morning, I don't want to get out of bed, because I'm usually up by 5:30 or 6 most days. So it's just a lot of just really tired that I'm not used to. But
Mhm. Well, and that's a good point too, is that you're not just coming home to be horizontal and be a vegetable. You've been away from your family for 8.5 days, and you're committed to devoting time to them now that you're home too. So it really is not only taking care of yourself, but you're back in the swing of taking care of your people too at the same time. Is is there anything you feel like you learned that you would share or would be valuable to someone else who were interested in taking on a big project like this, a multi-day sort of adventure?
yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm going through that list that I'm thinking, like the one bite at a time, the chunking mentality. enlist more friends than you think you need. Um, I kept thinking this idea of the pain cave kept coming back to me because every day, like by the time I got to day 2, I felt like I was just a permanent resident of the pain cave. But then when I got up to Paw Paw, and got Isaac here, sorry, and I ran through the tunnel, and it hit me that I could see the light through the tunnel and Paw Paw the whole time. And I don't know if this works or not. That's when I thought maybe it's not a pain cave. A pain cave, I'm stuck in one place and I can't get out of it if I'm in a cave. But maybe it's a pain tunnel where I can keep moving and just trust that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Trust in the training, trust in I can problem solve and find my way out of this, um, and then just get through the tunnel, if that makes sense. So I kept going back to that. Maybe that's because it was like day 4 and my brain was a little delusional at that point. But
I
that was
love that. I think that's profound.
right.
To the beach.
Yeah. Life keeps going. We go on vacation. We leave this Sunday, so that's what Isaac was just saying. I come back. I have 1 week to recover, and then we're off to the beach. And I can't just be a vegetable there. Yep.
Life moves forward.
Right. I said being comfortable with to be decided. That kind of became a mantra of not knowing what every day is to adjust. So if and I'm good at, like I said, I'm not a type A personality. I can make plans, but if the plans have to adjust, they can adjust. And I'm generally comfortable with this mentality of to be decided.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too, Isaac. Sorry. Gosh, I don't know. There was some other stuff. I don't know if I can leave. Am I still on?
I still hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me pull up my notes so I'm not.
You're fine. Take your time.
The idea that consistency in life is boring and sometimes hard to notice, that hit me because I realized I was running by people who had no idea what I was doing. And I'm running at a 12-minute pace, or if I'm walking at like an 18-minute pace. They're probably thinking, he's going slow, because there are people out there doing some hard workouts on the canal. But what I was doing was setting up for the whole race. So the idea that consistency in life is boring and sometimes hard to notice, but really consistency is what wins the day. That thought hit me.
It's
Maybe-
easier to do.
I like that a lot.
You want to get the energy out.
Yeah. Thanks, Isaac. I said details. When you run a race, you set all your gear out the night before, you make sure you have everything, and you kind of go through this mental checklist of, do I have the goose? Do I have my watch? Do I have my shoes set out? Do I have my gaiters? Do I have everything? But realizing that I had to do that every night after running 50 miles and then set it all back up for the next day. I know there were mornings that I started a run and I realized I forgot something. Like I forgot my handheld water bottles one day, or I forgot, just different than having to adjust. So the idea that details matter, maybe having this, I tried to do it mentally, but maybe having an actual checklist of things each night.
Yeah.
My brain wasn't working real well every night. And then I think that just about hits it all. And every time I talk to people, I'll go back to so I can see you. Every time I talk to people about running long distances, they always seem amazed, but everybody has their own race. I think everybody's gifted with something that they can do well. And I think it's about whatever that gift is. Maybe has nothing to do with athletics, but whatever that gift is, I think we have to develop that gift and honor that gift and then use that gift. And for some reason, I think I've been gifted with the ability to mentally and physically run long distances. And so over the years, I've developed that so that I could do something like this. And I don't know, I think if everybody kind of learned what their giftedness was, and then developed it and then used it, we could all do these big, epic things, whatever it is, in whatever profession. So,
My mom always sends me outside to get some energy out.
Yeah.
And I do not know why. That's just
this is my mini me, the never-ending that Isaac had. And so he just said
That's great.
his mom always kicks him outside to burn off energy.
You probably got that from your dad.
and my mom sends me outside
Yeah,
to get some energy out.
right.
That's what she does to Brad too.
Yeah.
That's only what he did to him for his.
That's what my mom did to me too. So
And then at the end of the day, wherever I was in the neighborhood, my dad had a cowbell, and I'd hear
Yep.
a cowbell because it's before cell phones, and that's how I knew it was time to come home for dinner. Whenever I heard
same,
Yeah.
that's when I was.
same.
Awkward.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh.
would somebody ring a bell for someone to come to the house and eat lunch?
That's how I knew
That's
it was time to eat.
Okay, Brad, I don't want to take more of your time away from your family. You've just made a big investment already.
You're fine.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up here by talking about what is next for you. I would usually say maybe it's too early to be asking that question, but I'm confident that you already have at least one plan for November, if not more than that.
Right. JFK, I'm already signed up for that. And I'd like to just keep running the JFK until I can't run it anymore, as long as I'm healthy enough. And I mean, you joked earlier that I'm chasing the record, and well, on one hand, that'd be nice. I'm also realistic enough to know that that's still 15, 20 years away. The streak record, the overall record is another 25 years away for finishes. So anything can happen.
Wow.
Being healthy enough that I don't break an ankle or something. So I'm realistic enough to know that while it'd be nice, I just want to run it as long as I can and see where that lands me. Big dreams. I think, I've always talked about wanting to Boston qualify, which means I'd have to actually do speed work. But I'm pretty sick of running 14-minute miles right now. So I'm ready to start speeding it up again. And I know that my PR for a marathon isn't too far off of a Boston qualifier. It's just that the PR is 10 to 15 years old. Otherwise, I've always had the dream of through hiking the Appalachian Trail. I just know that can't happen until all of our kids are out of the house. And those are just kind of big dreams.
And you have a 1-year-old in the house right now, so it may be a little while.
Yeah, that we're talking 20 years from now. So I just have to listen to what my coach tells me to do and stay healthy for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Well, chunking it down. Like you said, you're just taking 1 year at a time, one project at a time, and doing what you can with each one as it comes. And I think that's the healthy approach. And I think one of the things that I really admire and respect about you, and I think that the JFK streak has kind of put this in perspective for you, is that, we talked about how remarkable it is that you've been healthy enough to line up for 25 consecutive races. That's not coincidence. You do a very good job of protecting yourself and taking care of yourself. You're going for these big, giant goals, but you're not just doing it stubbornly and forcing your way through it and being reckless. You really are doing it intelligently. You're taking good care of yourself along the way and protecting your body for these long-term goals that you have. And I think that's really admirable, and I enjoy watching that year by year, season by season. So okay, Zach, did you have any other questions that we didn't talk
No,
through?
I
I think we
we
talked through a
kind
lot.
of covered. Covered it all.
I'm sure we could have you back to talk for hours and hours more if we really wanted to. But for now, we'll let you go to your family, get ready for your vacation, enjoy the beach, and we'll see you when you get back, I'm quite sure.
Yeah.
The only thing that we have to do is pack up, get a suitcase.
Ah,
Yeah.
That's the worst part.
that's the worst part.
The other fun part is going to the beach. But
Oh, yeah.
you get tired when you get to the beach because it's a long time to get there.
Yeah. It's like a 6-hour drive.
Yeah.
That is a long time. I don't even want to drive that far.
Have to go on.
All right. Thanks for being here, Brad. Isaac, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
See you guys.
All right.